you guys know the basics of the structure of a spread, I want to move on to how you actually place things on a spread. So the first thing you need to consider is that you're going to create a horizontal eye line. And this really facilitates reader's eye movement from one side of the spread to another. One thing that you want to remember with an eye line is you're not physically going to draw a line there. You're going to leave a 1 pica space that is consistently open throughout your spread. You can break it one time without causing major disruption to your reader, but never more than once. So when you think about your eye line, you want to think about placing things either hanging from it, like hanging from a clothesline, or sitting on top of it, like sitting on a bookshelf. You're going to establish that horizontal eye line, and then you're going to establish a vertical eye line. So that horizontal eye line is going to be somewhere in the top third of the page or the bottom of third of the page, never directly center. And then your vertical eye line is going to be somewhere within a third of your spread, or maybe even a quarter of your spread vertically. So this line could move over if we wanted it to this grid. See where it's starting and stopping on grids if I move it? That's important to remember. You always want things to be on those grids, okay? So from there, you're going to see that you've got this XY axis that you've created. The rest of your design is going to be developed using that as a structure. That XY axis creates dominance. So in this area, you're going to have whatever is your dominant storytelling package for your spread. You want to build out from that XY axis, like I just said, to kind of create a really strong design. And you want to think about having at least 4 storytelling packages on your spread. We're going to start with just basic design, and then we'll get into modular design in another session. But just if we were doing this as old school basic design, these are the good fundamentals, and you're going to follow these fundamentals even if you're doing more advanced design. So if you're ahead of us, if you feel like this is like old school review, it is, but that's okay because you always need to know the rules before you break them or build upon them. Okay, so now that I've got my XY axis, I'm going to build that dominant element. That dominant package or that dominant piece of my spread is going to contain the most important storytelling element on that entire spread. So you're going to want to start with a dominant visual element of some kind. Usually that's going to be a dominant photo or a dominant photo package. We'll get into photo packaging in another session, so I'm just going to again stick with those basics. So we have, in a traditional layout, we would have a big dominant photo in this dominant section. We would put a headline and a subhead, as well as our body copy or our text for our story. We would also want to have our caption for this dominant photo. The caption is always going to be adjacent to the picture. You want to think about your caption touching, I'm going to use that in quotes, touching your picture. Typically, we want 1 pica between all those elements in a traditional design. So you've got a pica here separating your dominant element from your headline and your story package, and then also separating your caption here. This particular design leaves a rail open right here. We'll talk about rails in the advanced design. If you're doing a type traditional design, that could come up to be 1 pica beneath your story. And I'll explain the difference about that again in another session. So again, this is your big deal storytelling package. It is the most important story. You want this photo, whatever it is, to be tied to the headline and subhead. Notice too, you guys, that this dominant does cross the gutter. That helps to create what we call eye flow. When we have that dominant element going across our gutter, that helps the reader's eye flow from one side of the spread to the other side of the spread. So that's another important aspect that you want to keep in mind. From there, you're going to build out in the opposite point of the axis. So in this other section up in here. And then you'll build over on the following one of the other sections, and you'll just keep building like a section, a section, a section at a time of your design, always working from the that axis point out. Keep in mind too, like you guys will notice over here, there's white space over here. White space is okay as long as it stays to the outside. We just don't want it trapped somewhere that it can't escape to the outside of the spread. That's a big major no-no. It creates trapped white space, or white space can also be called negative space if you've heard of it called that before, or if anybody else uses that term. But that negative space, we don't want to ever have that trapped between elements because that's distracting to the eye. When you take a look at this segment, we've built another area of our spread. This one would have one large photo here, a second large photo, and then captions. Again, those captions are adjacent to the photos that they describe. Building out that third module or that third section, we would have another photo and then a caption. Notice the caption is based toward that eye line. It's going to sit on the shelf. It's not going to float up in the air and leave white space beneath it. You always want to start in tight and work out. You also can think of this axis point as being like a bullseye. And when you design, you can think of this being a bullseye effect. You want everything, the heaviest elements toward that center point, and then the lighter elements moving out. So think of photos as solid, text as the next ring of that bullseye, and white space to the furthest point away from that center of that axis or the bullseye. So this negative space, it is left empty. Again, it's left to the outside, and that is definitely deliberate. We want to place it there really to help balance the eye and to give the eye some places to rest on our spread. If we have everything filled, from every little piece of the spread filled with something, the reader's eye is going to get too tired. So you want to avoid that.